Tesla saw major downside pressure closing at 395 after a very explosive open movement, gapping up out of this pennant-like structure, as well as going ahead and getting above that 425, closing above that, which was the previous support zone as well as a previous resistance zone. So we had a lot of nice signs, and the market did dump. The entire market reversed, guys. If we go ahead and to look at QQQ, for example, we see that we had that nice open, that gap up continuation. Overall market could get too high up. We see Tesla being one of the leaders, getting a very nice move out on the first hourly candle, but then we see this huge dump in the overall market, and we're getting under this important support level of 592 on QQQ that we really wanted to hold. So we have a micro support here, but really looking kind of clear to that 574 if we can't get a quick volatile correction back up. And now this will directly affect large cap stocks like Tesla, where we broke out of this structure beautifully. And then we see a ton of pressure going from around 427 all the way down, retracing more than $30, guys, all the way to 395. So it's definitely not something to be taken lightly, guys. We could be seeing the bounce for Tesla. We are in a pretty nice range with that 384 being a nice support level there, as well as some other padded support. And we still are in a pretty good range with Tesla. And the overall market did react well to NVIDIA's earnings, guys. We saw NVIDIA got good earnings, had a green day, but then we see a very standalone stick out bearish candle, guys. Really solid candle showing that the sellers were in that complete control, just absolutely dominating today. You won't see stuff like that, guys. This is rare. It's very rare seeing such a strong and big movement to the downside, and that's NVIDIA being the catalyst after having good earnings reports. So we have a ton of stuff going on in the market, guys. Been a ton of back and forth, but we do see Tesla still in a pretty solid position. So should we be expecting that reclaim of 412, getting in this better range, or are we going back to the downside? I'll take you guys on to the weekly chart. In the longer term picture, we've seen very volatile moves going all the way to all-time highs of 488 and a very volatile correction. From there, we've gotten into these, on the daily time frame, flag and pole like structures, lots of back and forth until we went ahead and made that movement back up, getting close to those all-time highs there. Not quite there though. And then from there, we see a bit of condensed chop, another move up, and then we've seen sellers step in as the overall market has been trending to the downside with a bit of back and forth, where buyers trying to step in, ultimately getting lower on their bounce back attempts and the overall market continuing to sink. So we see a pretty clear picture, guys. We still are in a pretty obvious ascending profile. We've made this nice movement up. We've chopped sideways. We've continued this movement. We're seeing a very small pullback in the big picture of things. So if this continues, we could be seeing a further correction. But so far, so good on the weekly time frame. Now, if we flip on over to the daily chart, seeing the most recent price action here, this is where things get interesting, guys. So we've had a ton of movement through 412 and 466. We've seen buyers really lay their base here. We've had a very volatile move up, and buyers go ahead and lay their base. They kind of chill out, build that energy, but still remain in a ascending profile. And we reached those highs of 466. So not quite all-time highs, but we do reach some considerable nice highs given that overall, back and forth going on. Those flag and pole structures, if we go back here, a lot of back and forth. And from there, guys, we do go ahead and hold that 412 with some pretty strong support, right? Kind of laying a base there, bouncing there in this descending wedge, breaking out. And then we go ahead, test higher at 474. And this is where we see that sharp decline, guys, right? Not just Tesla alone, like we saw on the overall market. We'll go to SPY and QQQ. We've seen a ton of, constant downwards pressure. There's SPY, and looking at QQQ, just a lot of downwards pressure, guys, right? That's the story. We're trying to get these bounces. They're not as strong as these moves to the downside, and we just continue to see that pressure, with today being a very standout, harsh day to the downside. After a day looking nice to the upside, with that first hour being very strong, then completely reversing and seeing the most strong bearish day that we've seen in, you could argue this entire span of almost a year long, guys. Seeing such strong price action to the downside is definitely something you can't kind of look the other way and not notice. And now Tesla, overall, given that kind of price action, has held up pretty nicely compared to the rest of the market, right? We see that obvious descending movement to the downside, and we do retrace a good bit of price, but we hold up a bit better comparative to a lot of the things that we saw in the market. And if you check the hourly, guys, we were just breaking out of a pretty nice structure, like we were touching up on. This resistance being battled for a bit here. We're meet up with that support of 384. Go ahead and get tighter with that resistance. Find a little bit of ascending support. Nice little squeeze setup. We gap out and continue, and we're looking good here, guys. Right, that price target of 425 being that obvious last support as well as previous resistance in the past. So pretty obvious spot to target. We've targeted that. Made a nice little short-term trade there today. But once we dumped it, guys, got out at the perfect time. But the news came out with the Fed rates and everything going on. And there's been a ton of uncertainty in the overall market. So we see a very drastic move to the downside. We are still in the general range, right? We don't like that we are kind of breaking under this past support after we kind of broke out of that pennant. We don't like that retracement, but we still are in a zone where we can look for that bounce at 384 and try to go ahead and retest this spot. So not all is lost on Tesla in the short term. And long term, like we saw, guys, still very strong overall stock, which overall market is going to pull back. Everything's going to pull back, guys. There's only so much you can really do about that. If the overall market's pulling back, it's very unlikely for Tesla to go ahead and continue this movement. So that's kind of what we saw here. It's more or less kind of reacting to all the pressure getting pulled down by the market. And so if the bears continue in that control, that's a main zone you want to look out for, that 384. Honestly, guys, past that, we don't have all that much holding us up until that 367. So that would be the next spot you'd look for. If we do have a bouncing day, you could kind of look for this gap up level spot being roughly that 397 to 396 to go ahead and hold up there, guys. If we did see a quick surge in the overall market, quickly reclaim that, go ahead, try to continue back up to 412. But by what we're looking at, guys, it looks like the market could be testing lower for at least a couple more trading days. We'll have to see. Been very volatile back and forth with these false recoveries and continued narrative to the downside. But short term, you got to be kind of bearish here. We're looking at some really harsh price action to the downside, especially after a breakout of a pennant. But also in the short term, we see a possible bottom quite close, guys. We're not very far off from the bottom here. We could be breaking that going to 367, but I think that Tesla has more padding than a lot of large cap stocks that we are looking at. And one more time, looking at the overall market, guys, SPY, we're in a pretty pivotal spot where if we don't get the bounce here, which is going to be tough after such a harsh, volatile, solid red candle to the downside. If we don't get the bounce here, guys, we're looking for around a $10 drop, and even from where we're at, possibly even around a $40 drop before we see any real support zone. So this could get messy, guys, but still kind of in the earlier stages of it where we could be seeing a quick correction back up, trying to get that bounce. As long as the buyers can hold their ground and it's not this fake volatility that we saw in the early morning trading today, then you could be seeing a little bit of back and forth. But yeah, looking pretty ugly in the overall market. Could be watching that breakdown. If we get that breakdown on Tesla, watch that 384, 367 being the top levels. But overall, guys, bullish in the long-term picture. Tesla has been one of those stocks where it's been a bit of back and forth, right? But the grand majority of it all showing a nice upwards trend. Just a lot of chopping back and forth. So we're still kind of remaining in this unsure range here. We haven't gotten back to all-time highs since hitting that 488. But I think in the long term, Tesla quickly corrects as the overall market is. So that's our price prediction for today. Bears stay in that control. Look for that 384 level and that 367 if we break below that. And if bulls get back in that control, it'd be nice to see price get back in the ranges of 412 and 466. Going ahead, battling back, trying to retest those highs. So that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know your price predictions in the comments below, both long and short term. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you guys all watching to the end of the video. As always, guys, trade smart. I'll see you all in the next one.